we are exploring codependency today.
I couldn't do this without you, Mayim.
It's because you're codependent.
I want to do everything together.
You're codependent.
I like to go to the grocery store together.
You do.
I like to cook together. I like to decorate. I like to podcast. I like when you go on walks with the dog with me.
Great place to start. Is being a congenial, friendly partner the same as being codependent? No.
It only depends if your partner wants to do those things with you or not. If they don't want to, then you're codependent. If they do want to, then you guys are living your best lives.
Because a lot of people might say, what's with this word codependency? Everybody's throwing it around. Maybe it just means that I'm like okay with making you happy.
Let's talk about how many people this actually affects to understand the scope of what we're talking about.
The majority of people experience some level of codependency. I think it's important to point out all codependents are people pleasers. Not all people pleasers are codependents.
When does it tip the scale from maybe people pleasing and something that you just happen to do to an activity that can actually harm your life and your well-being?
The behaviors that you partake in when you are in codependency will likely continue to impact you in cumulative ways and can be very detrimental to your health. So I often identify codependency as like, I'm not okay unless you're okay. But this is a much more specific explanation. Someone who lets someone else's behavior affect them to the point that they obsess about controlling that person's behavior.
What do these patterns actually mean and look like?
Controlling, obsessive helping. I'm just trying to help her. Caretaking, coupled with low self-worth that often borders on self-hatred, an abundance of anger and guilt, a peculiar dependency on peculiar people, an attraction to and tolerance for bizarre other-centeredness that results in abandonment of self, communication problems, intimacy problems, and this is fascinating, an ongoing whirlwind trip through the 5-stage grief process. So for anyone who's ever been in a relationship that like keeps breaking up, you're not sure if it's right, you keep getting hurt, you keep going back, you keep going through like denial, bargaining, these things can be features of your own codependent patterns.
You see your partner and you know they need to do something for their mental health.
Stop talking about me and me needing to get sunlight in the morning. Nobody wants to hear about that. All right, here we go. I'm going to keep trying to get at this in the way that satisfies Jonathan, which isn't codependent at all. Codependents want and need sick people around them to be happy in an unhealthy way.
What does that mean, unhealthy way? Why? I want people to be happy because it makes my life better.
Jonathan, I need you to take out a piece of paper. Or your phone. This is a yes or no. If it's a yes, just mark down a hash mark.
Okay.
And everybody listening can play along. Have you ever worried yourself sick about someone else?
I mean, ever is a long time.
Yes, that's a yes for you. And worried yourself sick about other people means you're up at night thinking about someone else. You're coming up with solutions for problems they haven't asked you to solve. Spending your time thinking about the other person when it's not required. Have you ever tried to help in ways that didn't help? Have you ever said yes when you meant no? And in case you're like, of course not. Think about sex, people. Think about sex.
Think about helping people move.
Have you ever tried to make other people see things your way?
I mean, if you don't try, how can they see them?
Okay. Are we keeping track? Have you ever bent over backward to avoid hurting people's feelings and in doing so, hurt yourself?
Give an example. Give us an example.
To avoid hurting somebody's feelings, going on a date with someone when you knew you didn't want to go on a date with them, giving up your time, buying someone tickets to a concert because you thought it's what they wanted, even though you don't want to waste that money and don't have the money to spend. Have you ever been afraid to trust your own feelings? Have you ever believed lies and then felt betrayed? Meaning someone lied to you and you got hurt because of it. Have you ever felt the need to get even and punish? This is a good one. Have you ever felt so angry you wanted to kill someone? Have you ever struggled for your own rights when people told you you didn't have any? This looks like trying to assert your needs, your space, and being told you're not important. And finally, have you ever worn sackcloth because you didn't believe you deserved silk? This is self-abnegation, is what that's called. So this is 11 questions. Not bragging. I got 10 of them. So what this is painting is a portrait of not just someone who's doing for other people or obsessively worrying and caretaking other people. It's the set of behaviors that leads to these feelings of low self-worth, anger. You know, it's when people say that their non-alcoholic parent was more troublesome than their alcoholic parent. It's when the person who is trying so freaking hard to keep it together and trying so hard to manage, control, fix, make it right, that they become a mess.
What's the cutoff? What do you have to score on that quiz to say this is just normal functioning? Because look, when you say, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate here, but when someone says, have you ever? Well, you're a young person. You don't know what the social expectations are. You don't know how to stand up for yourself right away versus how often is this happening in your life in the present moment in the last year? Those are very, very different.
The idea is, are you seeing this as a pattern? Are you the common denominator in all of these kinds of interactions? Progressive codependency, meaning the way to know that this, has sort of become a cumulative and progressive problem, feeling hopeless, becoming seriously emotionally, mentally, or physically ill, eating disorders, addictions to alcohol, drugs, right? So these are the kinds of things that she identifies happen in kind of later, codependency. But the earlier stages, it can be really confusing.
Understanding boundaries, understanding what the social expectations are. A lot of this stuff feels like until it becomes a habitual pattern, we are just trying to figure things out.
Some of these patterns that arise in dysfunctional homes, even if there's not alcoholism present, in dysfunctional homes with abuse, even homes that aren't dysfunctional but have someone who's chronically ill, you can see these sort of patterns start to emerge. And what it is it's people trying to make sense of a situation where, in many cases, as a young person, if you're a child, your needs may not be met. You get esteem from being helpful, from being involved, or from being silent and not having any needs.
You get your self-worth from helping whoever's in the most need. So if that's an alcoholic parent or a dysfunctional parent, they may not have a schedule. They may have health issues. They may need you to cover for them. There may be younger children in the house where you have to take care of them. You may have to go grocery shopping. You may have to deal with adult aspects because they're not taking care of things. If there's a sick family member, it may be the same because that sick family member can't take on the responsibilities. So you may be caretaking for them and stepping into that role where you're getting your self-esteem and that validation and that acceptance from the family by doing things that are not inherently building yourself up. And that sets that pattern.
Many relationships have components of codependency in both directions.
So let's talk about the steps that help people start to identify their feelings, start to learn to understand what they need, when a boundary is being crossed, how to feel okay setting and articulating what they need and asserting themselves. These are all the ways to get out of chronic anger.
The need for detachment in order to start repairing some of these codependent patterns is the acknowledgement that the attachment that you have is detaching you from yourself. That's kind of the most basic concept. My over-attachment, whatever that looks like, whatever it feels like, that is detaching me from myself. We mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically disengage ourselves from unhealthy entanglements with others' lives and responsibilities, and from problems we cannot solve.
Creating that space between yourselves can allow you to then breathe, feel lighter, and reconnect to what you feel like without holding on to what they've just shared with you.
Detachment is also about acceptance. It's about accepting the reality of a situation, accepting the reality of someone else's situation, and accepting the reality that you cannot change their reality for them. Codependents are often reactors, but not actors, meaning we're really good at reacting to things, getting upset, planning, fixing, stepping in, like everything's a crisis, like fixing every crisis. See how many times you are reacting to something that may not need a reaction, meaning you realize later, like, oh, he didn't really mean that, or, oh, that email was clarified. Do it for an hour. Do it for 3 hours, 6 hours of the day. Do it for one day. What are the externalizing behaviors that you're doing when you're reacting? If we can just start having awareness about how much of our day, how much of our energy is spent in reaction, how much that could change. We hope this has been helpful and happy to hear what you think about codependency. So make sure to comment below and share this episode with someone that you think might be codependent.
We are fascinated to hear your score on the test, on the little quiz that happened. Post the number of yeses you got out of 11 in the comments. If you enjoy these exploratory breakdowns, let us know in the comments. That's also helpful. This is a new format we're trying out. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, click the little bell notification on YouTube or subscribe anywhere you get podcasts. We really do appreciate it so much, and it helps us make more.
From our exploratory breakdown to the one we hope you never have, we'll see you next time.
It's Mayim Bialik's breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or two.